Welcome to the Market Enthusiast podcast, where Good Life's Noah Brooks, Chief Market Strategist, and Chris Needs, Senior Research Analyst, break down today's topics, covering their impact on the economy and personal finance in a fun, easy-to-understand way for investors of all levels.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Market Enthusiast. I'm Noah Brooks, and obviously, Chris Needs.
Welcome.
I cannot believe how hot it's been the last 2 days. The dog seemed like he was going to go into heat stroke.
The kids have been getting tired early. They're playing outside all day. I've been loving it as well.
It was a record yesterday in Philadelphia. I think it was 101. New York was over triple digits. It's kind of crazy. I mean, like I always say, Pennsylvania is a great spot to be because we get all 4 seasons. Well, we are definitely getting the seasons this year.
My sister-in-law's down in St. Pete, Florida, and it's like 89 there. So
we're
it's
hotter
cool down there. Yeah. And I saw for the
that.
first time right by our office, the highway, the concrete cracking and expanding.
Oh, I saw that when I came in this morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
It looked like it had lifted up about 3 or 4 inches from the rest of the road.
Yeah. And they just threw some cones out there.
That's
never seen that before.
That's our tax dollars at work. Our extra 67 cents a gallon here in Pennsylvania at work.
Speaking of tax dollars, the temperature wasn't the only thing hot though, right? We had some tensions over in the Middle East.
I mean, shoot, I don't know what the temperature was in the Middle East, but definitely tensions running hot in the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, this is a much bigger story than we're going to get into here, but the U.S. Formally, if you will, bombed the nuclear sites, 3 nuclear sites in Iran over the last week, and we thought it was going to be, a market deterrent. I guess it
shrugged it off.
The market shrugged it off. Here
VIX
we are,
barely spiked.
Yeah, we're sitting. I mean, where we stand right now today, the S&P is essentially less than 1% away from all-time highs. We're just shy of 6,100. I think when I came in here, we were about 6,086 today, which is crazy. I mean, we talked about
NASDAQ
this.
hit an all-time high on Tuesday.
Well, not the composite, but the 100. Yeah. The Qs hit an all-time high, and I think we're at an all-time high today. We said this last time, but we're at about and when I say last time, it wasn't this much. It's just been higher, but we're about 25% off the intraday lows after Liberation Day, which was that Monday morning. We were well under 5,000 on the S&P, and now we're just over 6,000. So, if you had the foresight or if you were feeling opportunistic after that, that's where the money was made. Some people came in and wanted to put some money away, invest it. And then we had other people that were, kind of the opposite of that. And I think the right thing to do in those situations is probably do nothing or add if you can.
Yeah. I agree.
But, it's a little bit surprising, this whole Iran thing. That's not the surprising part. The surprising part was the market didn't really move on it. And I had someone here from Good Life ask me over the weekend, what the futures were doing. And I said, well, they're not really doing anything. Oil was up a little bit. But
then it fell back down this week now. So they did threaten to close the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil goes through. But interesting enough, there's 50% of that goes to India and China, who are their allies. I mean, not that India isn't, friendly with us, but they would have been pretty much harming their neighbors, Saudi Arabia and whatnot, by closing that. Wouldn't necessarily affect us. We're net exporters, I think, still.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, there's the thing, though. There's the catch with oil and fuel. We're net exporters, but it's a market-based economy.
Mm-hmm.
So when crude goes up, it doesn't just go up outside the United States. It goes up everywhere, which I think is hard to wrap your arms around. It's like going out to Red Lobster and getting the market price lobster. I haven't been to Red Lobster in a long time. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, if we could contain ourselves and not worry about the rest of the world, we'd set our own prices. Obviously, that's not the case with oil. Oil was $140 a barrel, not too long ago. And now it's just moderate. I mean, we talk about gas all the time on here, but it's not too high, it's not too low. Producers are still making money. I think there was
energy stocks have been getting hit. That may not be related to that at all, but they haven't been doing so hot lately.
Yeah. Well, money's flowing out of oil into electricity.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
Into utilities. I think I just saw, before I came in here, though, wasn't there a bid by Shell
on BP?
Yeah. That's crazy.
They're in single digit price to earnings. So you would think if someone's going to do a buyout, this would be the environment where they would do so. And we're getting one.
I mean, that's going to be the largest oil deal that we've seen since like the ExxonMobil deal, right? I mean, that's ages ago, though. I mean, there's not that many of those big companies around in that form, right? The large integrated oils, not that many of them. So this is going to be a big deal if it actually happens. I didn't see any pricing information that came out.
Yeah, I didn't see anything formalized yet. So
maybe they can get rid of my Luke Oil down the street from me. I hate that place. So yeah, I mean, the market's up, right? S&P 500 up 3.5% for the year. Growth is up, value's up. Even bonds are up. I'm always saying a diversified portfolio is starting to work again, and that seems to be the case this year. So we're coming up on mid-year. Our forecast, and we don't do a lot of forecasting on here, but our forecast at the beginning of the year was essentially up 8 to 14%. And we're closing in on that.
Yeah.
Up 3.5 now. We get 1% a month for the next 6 months. We'll be right in line.
Yeah. And we got lucky, not lucky kind of, but we were almost spot on with the drawdown. On the closing basis was 17.6. And we said in our annual outlook to our advisors, 17.4, which was double last year's drawdown, and worked out pretty nice. And we were confident, obviously stayed invested and took advantage of this bounce back.
Yeah. Well, that and what was the old line? That and 50 cents will get you a cup of coffee. Now it's that and $5 will get you a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Right. Talk about inflation. You go into, I'm not even going to get into the coffee tirade.
Starbucks, did you hear there were rumors that they're looking to offload their China business? And then they came out, and Nichols, their CEO, came out and said, not necessarily, but we are open to partnerships. So,
no,
since we're talking about coffee,
coffee
prices have been falling.
Yeah, they have. They were, if I'm not mistaken, all-time highs earlier in the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've taken a nice leg down.
Yeah.
Good for us coffee drinkers.
Yeah, so outside our borders, China, the Chinese markets are up reasonably well year to date. We don't have a lot of investments in China, but they are up. And then developed international is crushing it. It's pulled back just a little bit in the last week or so, but up about 17.5%. And then emerging markets, right?
Still rallying.
Places, I always think of emerging markets as like places you want to drink bottled water. Now, maybe that's discriminatory or painting a broad brush, but that's kind of how I describe it.
It's being prudent.
Yeah. Places you want to drink bottled water. They're up about 15.5% for the year, and they're at a year-to-date high, and they're actually at about a 3-year high going back to 2022. The all-time high on emerging markets was February of 21.
Yep.
Yeah. And then they had, obviously massive pullback. But surprisingly, they did pretty well in 2022 when we were down, and then they just stagnated for the last 2 or 3 years or so. But the question is, whether that trade or those flows will continue. It has legs. I think the big thing, you and I had discussed this a number of times over the last few weeks, is the pretty big discrepancy between price to earnings domestically. This isn't new. This didn't just come up, but PE domestically versus Europe versus the rest of the world.
Seems like, people are waking up to looking at that, where it was just sort of discarded for a lot of the last decade. But it's starting now to look like we'll get a little bit of a convergence, at least. Obviously, U.S. has such a premium valuation in comparison. But
rightly so.
Right.
There's a lot of reasons why, NVIDIA is trading at XPE versus, I was going to say Ford,
Mm.
but there's a lot of reasons that innovative companies that trade here in the United States are, richly valued or fairly valued versus I don't know if they're dramatically undervalued, but I don't think that Europe and the rest of the world did what they needed to do after the global financial crisis to make the financial infrastructure, the banking infrastructure, suitable to today's companies.
Yeah.
And they are not innovating in the same way that American technology companies are.
Yeah. Speaking of Europe, they are more value tilted than we are. Obviously, we have, as you mentioned, the most innovative companies in the world, and they will always demand a premium valuation. But that's just how it works out. And there's a reason why companies come here, and we don't have to get into all that. But the biggest growth companies in the world, essentially, if you look, there are a few exceptions here and there, but they're in the U.S. So that explains also why we have that valuation premium. Obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question about it. I think everybody learned a really valuable lesson when the Federal Reserve was raising interest rates. Essentially, everybody's looking at cash flow, forward cash flow, discounted cash flow. And when interest rates zoom up like they did, you have to discount that cash flow even more. We have a situation now where there's going to be a change in the Federal Reserve leadership next year. And obviously, the President of the United States is looking for the next leader of the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
And we're starting to see articles about bets being made on how many cuts they're going to have next year. Federal Reserve was meeting last week. They came out. Obviously, they said they didn't do anything. There's no change in rates as of last week. But the commentary was interesting.
Yeah. So in their baseline conference, they come out with a prepared statement, and basically they said uncertainty has decreased since the last meeting. It's still higher than at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
They did revise down their GDP estimates down to 1.4% for end of year 25, and they revised up their inflation expectations to 3%, which it's not quite at that level yet, but the whispers were, they're getting towards forecasting there's going to be stagflation, essentially. But still on the dot plot, still 2 cuts penciled in for this year. They have 2 penciled in for next year. Again, they'll tell you first thing, dot plot is not a forecast or an expectation. That's where they sit currently with today's information. And I don't know, 1% over 2 years.
The whole dot plot thing
seems restrictive to me. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. The whole dot plot thing is, I don't want to say it's nonsense, but if you go back to the era of zero interest rates, they were always forecasting a much higher rate in 18 months than it was now, and we just never got it. They didn't start raising rates until I think June of 18, and then lowered rates, and obviously COVID happened, and we know what happened since then. But now, I mean, they're kind of in a tight spot. Inflation is reasonably stable. Employment is really good, right? Under 5% unemployment. So generally speaking, that's positive. That would be at their target. But we have a situation where tariffs are up in the air. We have CFOs that are, waiting it out, see what happens. We have this July 9th tariff deadline that's supposed to happen. We have not really seen any deals come through. There was a demand by the administration to have countries give us their best deal. I didn't see any countries give any deals. I didn't see that happen. It might happen. It might have happened, unbeknownst to me, right?
We heard rumors that Japan had stepped away because we wouldn't relent on auto tariffs, for example. So it seems like they at least temporarily stalled out or wanted to separate and come back, maybe have some fresh air. But yeah, nothing with India, which is kind of surprising. Modi and Trump seem fairly friendly most of the time. Canada, I heard we're making a little bit of progress, but nothing signed yet.
So
very consequential date, that July 9th. I think there'll be a little volatility spike around there.
You said Modi. If I'm not mistaken, the reports that were out there were the G7, President Trump and President Modi did not, or PM Modi did not meet in person.
Trump wasn't there for long, was he, though?
Well, yeah, he seemed to have to leave. And I'm curious about that because the headline was certainly that he had to go deal with Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just love to have more insight into that.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, that's certainly a great way to say, hey, guys, I got to go. But I'm wondering, and you know, depending on where you lie politically, you're going to either really think this is stupid or you're going to think, yeah, absolutely. But he gets there and you have these 6 other countries. Were they locked and loaded for him or were they very welcoming? I'm curious.
I don't know. I'm sure he was expecting at least a couple countries to come with like a gold-plated folder and say, let's iron this out here at the G7.
Yeah.
And probably didn't get that. I mean, he was there for hours, it seemed like, and immediately jetted back out.
I mean, there was obviously pressing things going on. Let's not belittle that. But
let me digress here for a second. Those strategic strikes, and I mentioned this to you, stolen from Top Gun 2, where they go down and they drop precision bomb right into a ventilation shaft.
Yeah.
They stole it.
I did not see Top Gun 2.
From screen to military, they stole it.
Do you think the people in command, the generals, saw Top Gun 2 and were like, hey, that sounds
like we're doing this. This is going to work great. Yeah, for sure.
It's possible. It's possible. The thing that I don't understand, and if there's anybody out there technical enough to inform us of this, by all means, please let us know. Give us a ring or send us an email at marketenthusiast@goodlifefa.com. How do these bunker busting bombs drill into the soil or concrete hundreds of feet? I just can't fathom that once it goes down 20 or 30 or 40 feet, that it can go another 100 or 200 feet.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
30,000 pounds is a lot, though.
Yeah, but you drop a 30,000-pound iron beam on something, it's not going to go down 200 feet into concrete, is it?
It's going fast enough. That's like a meteorite.
No, I think physics says no. I'm pretty sure physics says no on that one.
You ever see that? I guess it's a conspiracy, but the Rods from God program, they send like tungsten rods down from outer space, and it's like a little mini nuke almost.
Okay, so getting back, so we bombed Iran, and nothing happened. And when I say nothing happened, market-wise, nothing really happened.
Yeah, they just basically did a save face missile launch to us where they gave a heads up to Qatar, knowing Qatar was going to tell us. We were able to basically block them all. And that's, again, I think it's just a save face thing with maybe the hardliners. Hey, we launched them. Don't get mad at us. We launched them. We fought back. But without intending to do actual damage, and they wanted an exit ramp, and that was their way. We'll tell them it's coming. They'll shoot them down. There's our off ramp to bring down tensions.
Yeah. It's widely reported that a lot of the refined plutonium had been trucked out in advance of that, right? We've all seen those satellite footages of a convoy of trucks, and certainly we don't know what was in there. I imagine our government does. But, being widely reported. So they dropped the bombs. The vent shafts are closed, right, out of Top Gun 2, but they still have the plutonium.
Yeah,
it seems like that. It's not buried 200 or 300 feet underground. What's the end game here?
I think they just want to maintain leverage, that they deserve a nuclear program, not a nuke as a weapon, but a nuclear program is totally fair. I mean, we're talking all the time about how important nuclear energy is going to be for us. Why would it be any different for them? I get it. I don't trust them, but I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trust issue, right?
Yeah.
How can you give your blessing to a country that essentially says death to America every time you turn around?
I don't have the numbers, but I know for a fact the Nagasaki and Hiroshima atom bombs that we dropped were enriched significantly to a significantly lower level than the nuclear weapons we have sitting in silos are today.
Yeah.
And, I'm pretty sure they had gone over 60% enrichment, which is definitely well more than I think those Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombs were. So,
I mean,
it's not ideal.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. What was the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger where he saves South Florida from the bombs, where the terrorist group has like 4 nuclear warheads, and they set one off to make sure that everybody knows about it.
I'm not the one to ask.
Oh yeah, it's a little bit before your time. Oh, something like that. But I just think to myself, you could get one of these nuclear bombs out of Iran, and you could truck it almost anywhere in Europe. You could certainly get it over here if you tried hard enough. I would do everything in our power to prevent these rogue nations, just like North Korea, right? I would do everything possible to prevent these guys from having a nuclear bomb.
I'm glad, at least so far, we didn't go as far as doing regime change. Not that I like the regime and not that my opinion matters to anyone, but regime change hasn't been supremely successful for us. So I'm just glad we didn't go that far.
Yeah. Well, I think there was reports, was it the Shah of Iran's grandson?
Yeah. He has the same name as the Shah who was ousted.
Aiming to come back.
Yeah, he was trying to hype up and support the Iranian people to step up and fight for their independence, and that, the regime under the Ayatollah has been oppressive. Yeah. Obviously, that's true, but of course he wants it.
Yeah, of course he does. I mean, our president is kind of in a precarious position with his base at this point because, he was elected obviously on lots of things, but one of the things he was elected on was getting us out of, foreign wars. And we've already seen, talking heads talking about how he's going back on his word. I think there's, a goal of getting out of foreign wars is good, but in practicality, where the rubber meets the road, I mean, you have to do what you have to do to prevent, we'll call it a rogue nation, from getting a nuclear bomb. I think Iran was part of the axis of evil that George Bush coined back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Iran, Iraq, North Korea.
Hey, I wasn't willing to go into the military, and I would never want boots on the ground and people in the line of fire. So glad we haven't gone there, and I hope it stays that way.
I mean, it would be great to solve.
Things have certainly calmed down significantly, so we're heading in the right direction, hopefully.
Are we bracing for, I mean, after this whole thing happened, the news, and I guess some of it maybe is where you're getting your news from, but everybody's like, well, we're going to brace for a retaliatory attack. There were travel warnings.
You mentioned a sleeper cell warning. Like, right? They said they would, yeah.
Well, they said it. I mean, they said they're going to activate a sleeper cell.
Mm-hmm.
I said this last time. I'm not going to stop what I'm doing. We're traveling this summer. We're going to do our things. It's not going to stop me, and maybe that's the wrong way to think about it, but
can't live your life in fear.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it, and I don't recommend anybody does. Well, speaking of fear, there was an article out this week talking about Europe and essentially saying that Britons need to prepare for some type of crisis management. Whether that's a terrorist plot, whether that is British boots on the ground somewhere else. But it feels like there's a real awakening in Europe. Obviously, Russia invaded Ukraine. That was an awakening. Now we have this new situation. Is there going to be peace in the European continent in our lifetimes?
Yeah.
Is there going to be peace in the Middle East in our lifetimes?
Probably not.
No, you don't think so? You don't think they could
what is lasting peace?
Have a beer together, have a glass of wine, and kind of work out all these problems?
I don't know. But what I did like through this whole thing is it did seem like other nation states in the Middle East didn't piggyback off of it. They all were like, hey, calm it down. Like, Saudi Arabia wasn't like on board with Iran at all. They're like, you need to stop saber rattling. You need to ratchet it down. Everyone came together pretty well. So it wasn't like multiple people jumped at their defense. China and Russia, while I'm sure communicating significantly, they didn't do anything. So Iran, I think, kind of felt pretty alone and maybe that's why they didn't respond more aggressively.
Do you think everybody's pissed off over there because it's so darn hot?
Probably.
Right?
Yeah.
We've only had a heat streak for 3 days, and it's like you go outside and it's terrifying to be out there. Is there anything that artificial intelligence can do to moderate temperatures? You're talking about rods from God earlier. Wasn't there a plan out there? Can't they make it rain somehow?
Oh boy. That's another conspiracy theory, I think.
No, don't they throw bags of cement out of the back of aircraft and somehow it rains? They seed the clouds.
Yeah, seed the clouds.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
Increase their density so they rain more.
It's almost like, what can't artificial intelligence do for us?
A lot of things. Apparently, you can't do reports without repercussions.
Why is that?
MIT study on AI. So basically what they did was they put a set of people who could use ChatGPT and not use ChatGPT, and they had them do a series of reports and what have you. And the results that came back is the ChatGPT users had a 47% reduction in brain activity.
Oh.
And were unable to basically report those findings from that research when having to do an oral report.
How did they figure that out?
Putting 52 people in a room and giving them an assignment. And they went back and did assignment. So significant reduction that they said lasted as well. So they had them do a series of reports. And by the end, they were just basically copy and pasting the ChatGPT output. And then they took it away from them, and then they had the people who just did the reports a normal way without ChatGPT and allowed them to use it, and they retained the information and wrote higher quality reports after keeping their brain activated. So interesting.
Sounds like you're saying there's a cognitive decline.
Exactly.
By using a helper software.
Let me read exactly what it said. 47% reduction in brain activity for serial ChatGPT users and the inability to quote the reports sourced through AI. ChatGPT users had the lowest brain engagement and consistently underperformed at neuro-linguistic and behavioral levels over the course of several months. ChatGPT users got continuing lazier with each subsequent essay, often resorting to copy and pasting by the end.
Wow.
So all those college kids spending all that money on an education, they're going to come out, not remember anything that they learned, essentially.
I mean, listen, the job market is about to get a lot harder in the next 10 or 20 years. I mean, even forget 20 years, 5 to 10 years. And if you are in school, college, or even high school, but if you're in college and you are using AI software to write your papers, you're going to come out and you're not going to know how to do anything, right? And then you're going to go to get a job and all you can do is use AI to process something, but AI doesn't need you to tell it what to do.
So employers will reduce headcount, reduce hiring, and just use the large language models themselves. No doubt.
Well, so if that's the case, I guess you can pass a college class using AI software, but you can't really pass, let's say, the CFA or the CMT. You can't pass those types of designations with artificial intelligence software.
Right.
Right. So does that elevate you and I?
I think technically that would, give you an advantage because like the study said, the people who did the thinking, did the researching without aid came out and had significantly better reports to begin with. And then when allowed to refine and use ChatGPT, they noted that they had significantly better reports.
Yeah. It sounds like, and depending on how old people are that are listening to this, it sounds like I can remember my mom not wanting to not wanting me to use a calculator when I was doing math homework as a little kid, because she said, you're not learning anything if you're just using the calculator. I'm not sure that's the case. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, depending on how old you are. You probably need to know how to do simple arithmetic rather than use a calculator for everything. But isn't using ChatGPT for that, I don't know that it's mindless stuff, but isn't that the same thing? Or is it outside those guidelines where just doing that is going to make you cognitively
I think that's an entirely different level of aid of using a calculator versus ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT, we looked at release that like deep research function.
Sure.
And it really is impressive when you put it in there. It gives you everything back, super detailed. That's a totally different level. That is far more helpful than having a calculator.
It is. It definitely is. There's no question about it. I just think, I find myself sometimes, I had this situation the other day, did a little bit of babysitting, and two young kids, our friends' sons, and we went out on the boat. It was hot, did a little bit of fishing, a little bit of swimming in the lake, came back. Ailish made some tacos, and I was finishing up, and each of the boys went into a different room to watch television. And I heard the word TV, and I just made an assumption about something. I go in to talk to him, and one guy is in the den, and he's watching YouTube, and he's watching trucks on YouTube. He loves it. He's in there hanging out, eating tacos, watching trucks. I go into the other room. He's on YouTube, and he's watching fishing videos. And then I think to myself, is that any different than me? I find myself, when I have a little bit of downtime, I'm scrolling. And is that
very similar, I think?
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Is that, am I giving myself cognitive decline? Instead of reading a 10-page article, and scrolling is just going to make me stupid. More stupid.
Depending on the number of hours, I'm pretty sure they've done research studies on the effects of social media and how bad they are. So I would probably say you're probably right. It probably doesn't help you in the long term. Limit your death scrolling.
I can only imagine
doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling. I can only imagine where a 15-year-old is going to be in 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, big concern with us raising young kids too. It's like it's tough to keep them off the tablets, because once they get it, that's all they want. It's tough.
Yeah. They need to be outside doing stuff. Well, let's bring it back to the markets a little bit. Like I said earlier, 25% decline. We are almost back at new all-time highs. What's the next thing coming down the road that's either going to push us to new highs or bring us back down to where we've been?
I mean, the two things I see coming up is I'm sure we're going to have volatility around both the big, beautiful bill legislation that getting chopped up, potentially having to go back and be reworked.
Yeah.
Definitely some volatility there. They want to get, those tax reductions signed in for permanence. And then sort of in this same timeline, we're going to see that July 9th deadline, which is probably going to be a mixed bag.
Yeah.
We probably will see some big deals come through, but, probably going to be some big exceptions too. And will be interesting to see what percentage get deals done and the market's reaction in relation to those who don't.
Yeah.
EU doesn't seem to be on that final sign on the dotted line.
No, they're dragging their feet, aren't they?
And they are, and they're saying they're prepping some retaliatory measures to just the 10% base tariff. So we'll see where that goes. But I'm sure since we've come back to these valuations and these levels so fast, I'm sure we're going to see some volatility here. So don't get scared if you see a 5 to 7% move. Don't run and do anything irrational based off that, because with how quick we snap back, I would say it's normal.
It's crazy to think that April 6th, May 6th, June 6th, 2.5 months later, we're back at all-time highs. I mean, that was similar to COVID, not exactly the same time frame, but the market wants to go higher.
Yeah.
The market wants to go higher.
Mm-hmm.
And there's money flowing in. Even though there's money flowing to international companies, there's still a lot of money flowing into U.S. markets.
We were talking earlier, I think year end, positive 8 to 14% range that we initially called for at the beginning of the year. I think that's very reasonable. And we can certainly still have some volatility between now and the end of the year and very easily get to that level.
Yeah. Well, you heard it here, folks, everybody. 8 to 14%. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We still have 6 months to the end of the year. And so there's a lot that can happen. I mean, there's a lot that did happen in the first 6 months. There's going to be a lot that's going to happen in the next 6 months. It's too hard to call. But yeah, I mean, high single digits, low double digits would be a gift from God in 2025.
Yeah. I don't think we'll have another 20% year at this point, but
you never know.
We'll take what we can get.
You never know. All right, everybody. I appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much for listening. Questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, send it in. Market Enthusiast at goodlifefa.com. We appreciate everybody out there. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly.